to the Payments Leaders Show. I'm your host today, Adrian Evans, and I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Michael Harty, the founder of the Card and Payment Awards, to the show. Michael, welcome.
Good morning, Adrian. Thank you for having me again. Second time.
Yeah, I know we're making this a habit, which is wonderful. So on the Payments Leaders Show, we're all about embracing the opportunities that are in the industry because the growth potential to reduce friction across the industry is enormous. And we're about creating the opportunities before we start looking at the challenges. And this is a passion Michael and I share. So without further ado, Michael, I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about your background, having before you joined and created the Card and Payment Awards.
So my background is actually I'm an insurance guy by training. Worked in the corporate insurance world with Aegon in Europe, and then I started a consultancy business on insurance product distribution, and then I came back to Ireland and started a thing called an MGA. For people who are not familiar with the insurance world, it's a managing general agent where fundamentally it's a bit of an oxymoron, but you operate 100% like an insurance company without actually taking risk. So
right, okay.
You do everything. It's a soup to nuts service for insurance companies who maybe don't have operational capacity or expertise in a particular product line. So we were a specialist MGA in pet insurance. So we did everything so we owned the brand, managed distribution, obviously customer service, claims handling, so full risk management. We also did underwriting, pricing. And we built that business over a 10-year period and disposed of it in about 3 years ago now, actually. And that was the point at which I guess I turned my attention to the Card and Payments Awards, which I had been a shareholder in, but hadn't had a lot of operational involvement in it.
Okay.
So after taking a small amount of time off after our disposal, I turned my attention to TCPA, and we're looking closely at building that out now. It's big difference between a B2C business and a B2B business.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the core critical fundamentals, of course, are the same in terms of keeping happy and delivering consistently good product. But the risk factors for me anyway are significantly different. We had can't remember exactly how many policyholders we had, somewhere between 12 and 15,000 policyholders, and you lose a couple of them and it's not that big a deal. But you have we've got whatever 15 sponsors in the Card and Payments Awards. You lose a couple of them, but it's a big deal.
Absolutely.
So your level of risk exposure in a B2B business is really quite different to what it is in a B2C business. So yeah, that's my background pre-TCPA. All insurance, direct consumer, life accident and health products.
Excellent. And just to say, when you mentioned disposal, I think, if you pardon the term, but I think successful sale is probably a better term in terms of what you're able to do there.
We were really happy with it. Like it's interesting for me, and it's the same with TCPA, right? For me, it was much more when I started the business. It was much more about who was going to buy it than how much it was going to sell for. Right. I really needed that validation from the industry that what we had built was useful.
Right. Okay.
And in the end, we had a few. I always wanted it to be an insurance company. It had to be an insurance company, not a broker, not another MGA, not an intermediary. It had to be an insurance company that said to us, we like what you do and how you do it. We like the numbers that you produce. And that for me was kind of validation for what we had built, right? So, in the end, we had, 2 or 3, actually 3 or 4, rated and listed insurance companies trying to buy it. No, I don't want anyone to be misled that that impacted the number. We sold at a level that we were quite happy with without it being unbelievable. But yeah, for me, the success was that it was an insurance company who bought us. It validated that we built something that was relevant to the insurance ecosystem. It wasn't just about I see people build out, and I see it in the payments industry as well, by the way, but in the insurance world particularly, people build out huge customer bases that just don't make any money.
Yeah.
And they move from, they flip their book from one insurer to another. Every one of them thinking they can turn it around, and they don't, and everybody loses money. And that just doesn't make any commercial sense to me.
Brilliant. Okay. Yeah, and I think that's so it's really important to bring that backstory to life, because I think it dovetails really nicely into the Card and Payment Awards, where we share a belief about embracing opportunity and also then, I suppose, looking at the positives within the industry. So tell me what the card and payments and how that's come about and what it means to you to celebrate the industry success in terms of innovation, growth, and reducing friction within the industry.
Well, it's it's funny because as I said at the start, I was a shareholder in TCPA originally. I was asked to invest in it to get it going, and we did that. And honestly, if I'm being brutally honest, I didn't really understand it properly
Okay.
at the time. I certainly didn't at the time. And when I ended up taking it over full time in 2015, 16,
Mm.
I'm not sure I really understood it properly then in terms of what it did. Of course, it's an awards, right? And
Yep.
which is very simple. Of course, it's an awards business, right?
Mm.
But it's not really an awards business. I mean, that's fundamentally what it does. It's a bit like in the insurance world, say you're an insurance company. So what do? You do insurance, but it's actually not what we did. We provided financial security for people to give their pets the best level of care possible, right?
Okay.
So yes, the product is insurance, but that's not what it is. Our product is awards, but in terms of what we do, it's about pulling together an ecosystem that
Yep.
celebrates the very best practice. And
Mm.
it's hard to if you equate that across multiple other areas, it's hard to ever comprehend why you shouldn't have an environment that celebrates and promotes success. You and I
Mm.
were just having a talk about teachers, and you were telling me about a teacher who told the whole class at the start of your A level cycle that you were all going to get A's, right? So that kind of a positive environment
Mm.
where
Mm.
success success, we do it with our kids, we do it within our families. Teachers should do it in classrooms. So why shouldn't you do it in business? Which is,
Brilliant.
let's look at what's great.
Yep.
Let's celebrate that. For me, it's in terms of what we do, I like to think that we create an environment that allows the industry to recognize um, what's best about the industry. But for me, downstream, that feeds into what's best for the consumer or the
Right.
customer. And that for me is what I hope we always do. And that's what I hope we achieve within the awards themselves. Fundamentally, it's about
Mm.
how do we promote the betterment of product,
Brilliant.
feeding into consumers and customers.
Yeah, that's wonderful, because that's why I love this industry, because the payments industry for me is an opportunity for 4 or 5 wins, and it starts with the consumer, starts with the organization, the industry, but we've got a chance to make all boats rise here. And it's only, again, we don't have to think back too far when we were all dealing in still with so much cash, etc. And the friction that's been taken out of the industry is amazing. And I think we are only starting on a journey that's only going to continue further. But celebrating that is, I suppose, quite distinctive. So you
Well, I
talked.
think if I can, sorry,
Yeah.
I don't want to block your question. For me, yeah, I'm always nervous about the word celebration, right?
Mm.
Because of course, the naysayers will say, it's a black backslapping exercise,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
it's not. It's not about. Of course, it's about celebration, but for me, it's more about recognition of what's best.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and, and you talk about a rising tide lifts all ships. Of course, it does, but it's about laying down benchmarks for the industry, right? It's about what we want to do. If I can inspire one or two people, if we can inspire one or two people every year to leave that room and say, I want to emulate what those guys did,
Yeah, yeah,
or I think my customers should have that product as well, or a
yeah.
product in that kind of stratosphere. Then, so for me, it's much deeper than a celebration.
Mm,
It's more a recognition of the workflow, work streams, and effort that went into creating products that are brilliant for
yeah,
consumers, either by reduction of friction or reduction of fraud, or
yeah.
offering more payment mechanisms, within the same application. So for me, it's
Mm,
much more about recognition than celebration.
excellent. Yeah, yeah. No, it's interesting for me. I don't know, I hadn't been a victim of fraud for 23 years, and then last Saturday, my card was copied, and I was only thinking, wow, thank God, fraud is, and it was actually um, an award-winning fraud bank that had actually stopped that, and it's those moments when you realise just how successful that is. Just on that front, though, is the recognition there of rising different organisations to another level. Why is that so deeply important to you?
Well, I think we're an incredibly product focused business, and
Mm,
and yeah, look, our core fundamental beliefs are those of integrity,
yeah.
honesty, and equitability.
Mm,
And I think to be able to adhere to all of those, without blinking, we've become an incredibly product focused business. And it's not all about big budgets for
yeah.
us. It's about, if it's a man and his dog in his garage who've come up with something that's going to be game changing for the industry and therefore for the consumer, then
Mm,
as far as we're concerned, our hope is that's what the judges will recognize. As you know, we have no influence over the judging process.
yeah.
Absolutely none. I mean, people don't believe this. I mean, none, zero. We can't. Sometimes I see the judges making decisions that I don't agree with. We have no say. We
Mm,
have our non-voting chair, Roger Alexander, who's incredible in the manner in which
yeah.
he runs the judging process. And we also have an incredible panel of judges who, they can from time to time vote against their own product in the interest of recognizing what's better in the industry.
Yeah.
So, um, for me, our focus is on product. It's about recognizing best products, processes, and I think ethos as well.
Yeah.
And that's what's really important to us.
Brilliant. So I'm hearing their integrity is vital, and obviously independence of the judgment panel is key in the process of recognizing innovation and growth.
Yeah, look, and we might talk about this in a moment, but we've moved out to the Middle East.
Yeah.
Our plan is to open, probably three or four more jurisdictions in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
Started off with the Middle East, and certainly in that market, our guess is about 85 to 90% of the awards out there are pay and play. So in fact, they're great, consumer marketing tools, but in fact, the award, I'm not going to say it means nothing, but it certainly doesn't mean as much as
Hmm.
an award that you've received because you've been judged by your industry peers,
Hmm.
um, through a process that seeks to eliminate bias at all times. So, you look at our judges. If a judge has had an interest in a product in the past, today, or is going to in the future, even tangentially, they recuse themselves from voting
Right. For that
um,
particular category. Yeah.
for that particular category. Sorry, unless they say, actually, I'm not going to recuse myself because I want to vote for a different product, which
Yeah.
we do permit, and they're my goosebump moments at the judging
Mhm.
table,
Brilliant.
when somebody votes for a competing product because it's what's best for the industry.
Yeah.
Um, so I think we've got this very firm, very clearly defined guidelines in terms of how the process is run and how our judges are allowed to vote within that process. And that allows us to, and then of course from our perspective, just staying the heck out of that process allows us to maintain the integrity that we want the awards to have. I had let's just say a sponsor. I can say a sponsor a few years ago didn't win for a couple of years, and they came to me and said, well, we might consider not sponsoring if we don't win. And I said, well, don't sponsor. I said, I can't, I have no control over that process. I hope you want to sponsor for what sponsorship represents and what sponsorship is worth to you as an organization. But if it's to win, it's the wrong reason to do it. So
yeah. It's so echoed, and just to say, anybody who hasn't been in the Card and Payment Awards, it's 1,400 people at a wonderful event in Park Lane. But I think what always captures it for me is when some of the reactions from some people, when they actually do win. You could just see when they've worked on that product, when they've gone through the blood, sweat, and tears, but that industry recognition, that independent industry recognition, some people are whooping and hollering, and they're delighted because it actually means something.
It's mainly because they don't believe it.
Yeah.
I mean, we bring new judges onto our panel. We tell them how the process is going to work, and I talk to them at the end of our judging process and at the end of our final judging day, and they say, "Well, I know what you told us, but I didn't quite believe it.
Right.
I didn't actually believe that the process was going to be as an event." So scroll forward to entrance and small companies who win. I think that their reaction is, I think a big part of it is surprise. I think they didn't quite. They see, and they'll see that they're competing in categories against sponsors potentially, and they just, I guess, coming into it, and of course they're hopeful, but I don't think they quite believed it 100% that this is as independent as they say it is.
Yeah.
And if we don't have that, we don't have a business. Certainly, we don't have a business that I want to run. That's for sure.
Right. Yeah. Well, I know that from your perspective in terms of aligning with integrity is absolutely vital from your perspective. So obviously, so far, the award ceremony has been focused on the UK predominantly and based out of London. So perhaps you could tell us more about the Middle East and obviously the opportunity that's happening there in June, and why you've gone to the Middle East and you chose that first as somewhere to bring recognition to that industry and that region.
So firstly, it's April.
So
no, that's okay. I love correcting you, as you know, Jim. So it's
you do it regularly, Michael. You do it regularly, so it's fine.
It's good to be able to do it in public. He's not often wrong, but sometimes you're wrong, Adrian. Look, so what we want to do is create the same ecosystem in other markets as we've created in the UK and Irish market. No one could say that 20 years later that we've been quick to do that, but again, as I explained, I've been distracted with other things, and I'm really excited now to take this brand out and take what we do to other markets, and in some ways cross our fingers and hope the market wants it. I don't believe there's any market that shouldn't have it. But then in terms of customs and traditions, will every market accept a product and awards that where the outcome is truly uncertain?
Okay.
Right? And we do get feedback from people saying, well, if I've won, I'll attend. And you may or may not know this: nobody knows who's won. In fact, we get to the awards night, and sometimes a judge will call me and say, can you remember who it was that won category X? I mean, I always reply and say, I don't remember. Of course I can access the information, but I can see no reason to discuss it between the end of the judging day and the announcement, right?
Absolutely.
So we never announce who's won. We never indicate to people whether they've won or not. We always figure out a way to get people into the room. I think in 20 years, this year was the first year that we didn't have a winner in the room, so that's 20 times 20, so in 400 awards presentations, we've only one once not had a winner in the room. No, if we had called them and told them they were a winner, I'm pretty sure they would have come and attended, but we just don't do that. To our commercial detriment, I hasten to add, right?
Right.
But that's just the way it works from our perspective. So, we're really excited to take it to the Middle East market. It's really vibrant over
Yeah.
there. There's lots and lots going on. For us, the dynamics of a regional event are quite different to a
Okay.
local event in terms of how you engage people, in terms of how many people from a single organization are willing to travel.
Yeah.
But we've put the same structures, and I mean, when I say the same, I mean identical structures in place for a Middle East event, even though it's quite a different market in terms of culturally how they're adapted to awards over there.
Mm.
We've input an identical process.
Yeah.
So, same same qualities of integrity, honesty, and equitability. Same focus on product, same balance within the judging panel, same industry oversight within the judging panel, where we have very senior individuals from all of the really big organizations who we're hoping trickles down into the rest of the payments ecosystem over there, where they'll say, actually, this is as independent as they say it is, right?
Yeah.
And that's really important to us, that trusted voices are able to confirm that we're doing what we say we do.
Okay.
So the Middle East for us it's really exciting. It's a pretty disaggregated market,
Yeah.
certainly from a banking and payments perspective, and that's really exciting. That really suits awards businesses, because you want people looking for USPs and differentiators. So being a winner at TCPA is that. We do have questions of I'll enter if I can win. We say, well, it doesn't work that way. They say, well, then why should I enter? And I kind of my stock response is, that's like an athlete saying, why would I enter the Olympics if I can't
Yeah.
win?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, well, and I think that everybody in the industry, not that anyone wants to hear me telling them what their duties and responsibilities are, but I think if you were to look at it kind of more holistically, I would say to anybody, you do as an organization within the industry, or you should have some duty of care to the industry. And
Yeah.
if you believe that creating an ecosystem, an event, and awards that genuinely recognizes and rewards what's best in the industry,
Mm.
and you have a duty to participate
Yeah.
in one way or the other. Not an obligation, right? But on some level, you might say, okay, the more of us that get involved, the more relevant this is,
Mm.
and the more relevant this is, the more relevant the results are. So that's our hope. We've beaten all of our expectations in terms of. Sorry, when I say all, again, this is a bit of an oxymoron. Of our key core criteria, which would be number of entries, number of entering organizations, number of sponsors, and then number of attendees. We've blown 3 of the 4 of them out of the water completely. And on the fourth one, on the attendee side, we're probably slightly down on where we would have expected to be.
Okay.
But our business model in the UK is sell tables. Our business model entering the Middle East has been sell tables. But I think, as a regional event, we probably need to reassess that for next year, and
Okay.
be slightly more of a ticket sale business rather than a
Okay.
business. Expecting someone to, buy a table and fly 10 people and 10 hotel rooms into another region for one night is a tougher conversation. But what we're going to do to help that is we're going to add more product onto the business as well, both
Right.
in the UK and in the Middle East. So we're really excited to announce that over the next couple of months.
Excellent. So I'm hearing there that the value set still is the same. The transparency and the honesty and the recognition is most important. But this is quite a fragmented marketplace across the Middle East region. So it's going to be in Dubai, but at the same time, as you say, but you're adapting at the same time then to say what are the needs of the marketplace to be able to celebrate this. And your analogy there about an athlete only being willing to enter the Olympics if he or she is going to win that strikes me a lot of sort of win at all costs. Yet, I think I'd love to hear your view about something I called competitive collaboration, because I see in the payments industry a lot of people who have the mental and emotional dexterity to be a competitor one day, working in a partnership another day, and then actually being vendors the other. And it brings a different mindset to the industry. Well, what's your view on collaborative competition then?
But I think that I think that TCPA is the very essence of
Yeah,
uh, competitive collaboration or collaborative competition,
yeah,
whichever way. But I guess it's competitive collaboration. And I always say, look, for I see TCPA as as an industry collaboration where fundamentally everybody puts down their weapons for a night, comes together, recognize together what's best in the industry, and then everybody can go back to trying to eat each other's lunch again the next day.
right.
And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
But I think it's important, at least every once in a while. I mean, you can talk about how frequently, competitors should be collaborating, and that, there's a whole other conversation around that, Adrian, around, you know, um, anti-competitive
sure.
behavior. But excluding that behavior, I think any collaboration that you can do that's going to be for the betterment of the industry, and this feeds back to a rising tide raises all ships, right?
Yeah,
So, so for me, TCPA is an industry collaboration.
yeah,
They all come, they sit side by side, competitors alike, um, uh, to to continue to promote best practice in the industry, and I think that's a really, really positive thing.
brilliant, brilliant. You've mentioned just two things. There's obviously commercially only so much you can say, but how do you see that model changing in the Middle East? And then also, well, how do you see that model changing in the Middle East? Because you're trying to bring people in, flying in from different countries into the UAE.
Well, I think so. First of all, on the competitive collaboration side, it's the same
Yeah,
as we see in the UK. Um, we have, plus others. We have, really all of the same sponsors we have in the UK market. So, which is nice because it shows that, sorry, impressive, I should say, because it shows that, from a fundamental values perspective, these organizations are carrying those values across jurisdictions, right?
yeah,
So, I think that's really cool. And in fact, it was something that we hoped was the case, and we're certainly relying on would be the case. Um, then in terms of how our business model changes, I mean it's interesting. I mean I think the region is going to attract many more entries than we get in the UK. So this year I expected somewhere between 30 and 40 entries this year. I
okay,
thought we'd have. We ended up with just shy of 100. So we
wow,
had 900 entries. I thought we were going to have about 15 organizations. We had 50
wow,
organizations entering. So those numbers are really exciting, right? And everybody wants to come, everybody
mm,
wants, but not everybody wants to pay to come,
yeah,
or not everybody wants to buy a full whole table to come. So I think where the model is going to be different is I think we're going to have a far higher volume of entries. We're going to have far more companies entering, but I think you'll have fewer representatives from each company actually
yeah,
coming to the event. Our commitment to our sponsors, though, is that we fill the room,
of
right?
course,
Because that's what they. It's one of the things that they want. It's not the only thing that they want, but it's one of the things that they want, and that's our commitment to our sponsors and to the industry. Is that we're going to bring as many senior people in the industry as possible
mm,
through into one space to look at what products are game changing in the industry. Uh, so I'd say it's more kind of a variation on the theme rather than a significantly different approach to doing
yeah,
business
yeah,
in that region versus the UK.
yeah, yeah. That's always one of the things that always impresses me, that when you walk from the hotel lobby before you actually hit the ballroom, just the number of people at a senior level you're spotting. And I know it's often called the Oscars of the payments industry because of the caliber of people you get into the room. So that's something I just wanted to acknowledge. Where do you see where do you see the business going from here? Is this going to become multi-regional from here? Because you say there's, obviously the industry we're in, it's got 230 markets across the world. Where do you see the opportunity to recognize industry best practice?
But I don't think there's anywhere that there's not an opportunity to recognize industry best practice.
Mm.
Certainly, I don't think there's. Sorry, and I'm not speaking to need now because we haven't analyzed every market and see is anybody else doing what we're doing in those markets. Or certainly the way we do it, there are people doing what we're doing. I mean, the two things about us, I think, that are particularly relevant is number one, we're straight down payments.
Yeah,
You've
yeah,
got lots of awards that banking organizations and payments organizations can enter, but we're the only one that's
yeah.
straight down payments. Um, so that's so do I think that there is anywhere that you shouldn't have a forum to recognize the best products that are in the market? I don't think it exists. I can't think of an example where that's not appropriate to do.
Mhm.
So certainly other markets they'll possibly be all regional. I mean, we're really interested in the States.
Of course,
Uh,
of course.
Again, there's lots of things to think about there from our perspective because you're potentially trying to get someone to fly transcontinental
Yeah.
for a one-night event. But again, the thing we're working on at the moment, in terms of bolting on additional product, we want to give people more than one reason to travel to see us. So we're really excited and watch this space. I think in the next 4 to 6 weeks, we're probably going to announce what that product looks like, and it's and again, for me, it's all the same thing, right? It's all like TCPA for me is information sharing, right?
Yeah, yeah, of course.
So it's who was best in the market at X, and here's the product. So we hope people learn from that. The other product that we're working on now is going to be obviously a less formal environment, but that's going to be about information in the industry as well, and we're really excited about what that looks like.
Excellent, excellent. I wonder if we just turn the attention for the towards the industry and business. I'm really interested to understand. There's obviously significant opportunities in the payments industry, but which as again somebody who sold a business effectively, we often advise scale ups to move towards sale. And what advice would you have for a business owner or a business founder who is looking to get more recognition, but at the same time successfully sell their business in the future?
Look, first of all, I can say that a number of our participants over the years have been bought by our bigger participants.
Mm.
I'm not saying that that's 100% why, but I like to think that they saw each other in the room, maybe started a conversation in the room.
Sure.
Maybe someone from one of the larger organizations, it piqued their interest. They said they liked the look of it, but also our judging panel are really senior industry people, and I hear the conversations that go on in the room, and you'll hear very senior people say, I wasn't aware that these guys were doing this. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
So I like to think that we're serving as a small bit of as part of that payments industry grid. I
Yeah.
like to think that we're at least one dot on it. Maybe a little substation. I mean, we're certainly not the main power plant, right? But
Yeah. Yeah.
we're a substation that's connected into that, and it's feeding information across, either from how we publish within our own channels, or by our judging panel or people in attendance see
Mm.
something that they weren't aware of what's going on. In terms of me giving advice on someone how to sell a business, I'm not a fan of talking about things that I don't see myself as an expert on. I can speak to my own experience only, and my own experience
Absolutely.
was I had a very clear idea of who I wanted to buy my business,
Yeah.
and I had a very clear idea of what it was that was going to motivate them to want to buy my business.
Right.
So I didn't have a holistic approach to it. I was very specific in terms of it was insurance. So underwriting margin was critical. The brand was, in terms of how it was received by the public, was critical. and our customer service was critical. So they were the three areas that, we had laser focus on every single day, and we were always trying to improve those processes. So, could I advise a payments company on how to sell and who to sell to? I couldn't. My technical understanding in the industry is not good enough. I don't need it to be for what I do. We bring in our experts onto our judging panel to judge the product. We make sure that our processes are adhered to. I do understand integrity, honesty, and equitability. We make sure that that's adhered to at all times. After that, in terms of the technical expertise, they're our amazing judges, and they do that work for us.
Michael, I wonder if we could just take a bit of time just to sort of summarize what I've heard so far. Is that okay?
Sure.
So I think the thing that struck me, I think, first of all, is the opportunity and to recognize what the payments ecosystem is actually achieving, but actually fundamentally from the belief that all boats rise, and we can make all boats rise in a rising tide there, and ultimately that starts with a better consumer experience, and also there's a nice collaboration that can bring from a competitive perspective as well by sharing information, but actually by having a honest, transparent, and equitable process with the award ceremony. It means that actually this is transparent. Nobody knows who's going to win that, and you've given some examples there where sponsors haven't actually achieved those. So that's fundamental to the success and having the integrity. The other piece that's I think really interesting for me as well is the opportunity that exists across the Middle East, across potentially North America here, and other regions which can make a difference. But I think it fundamentally comes back to knowing, and it's really interesting what you were saying there about when you sold your business, you know whom you wanted to sell it to, but you had the key matrix of what the brand meant, what the margin was, and what the customer experience was like that made the difference. So whilst there's not the expertise in payments, I think some organizations could do with sort of focusing on those in a particular way. But I suppose just going back to a very human perspective, which what we're all about, that the teacher example we used earlier today was what's possible when we realize what an A can look like.
Yeah, like I, I totally agree with that. The Sticking with your rising tides, a rising tide lifts all ships, and I think if you develop out the analogy, if you're starting from low tide, and let's say low tide was when it was only cash.
Yeah.
Let's say low tide was cash was the only way to pay,
Yeah.
right? Can we agree that that's fair? That's a fair low tide.
That's fair. That's a very low tide. Yeah.
Industry. And I actually only just thought about this as you were talking there. I'm a sailor, so it was always my passion was.
Yeah.
But I wasn't a great boatsman, right? I was a good sailor, but I wasn't a great boatsman, right? And you'll understand the difference. I tied up a boat once at low tide, and I left a totally inadequate amount of rope for the tide to rise. And when I arrived down to work the next morning, to a furious boss, the boat, because the rope was too short, had sunk. So I spent a lot of that day bailing that boat out. I think it's a great analogy for why reassessing what low tide looks like is critical, because if you remain anchored to the low water mark, everyone else is just gonna pass you by. So yeah, I couldn't agree more. And you go back to that education piece, and you and I talk about kids and education and teachers and coaches, and how creating a positive environment is so much more important for the creation of ongoing success than being critical of what's gone wrong. I think we talked about airline pilots recently, and I'm sure somebody might correct me, but as I understand it, airline pilots are never told what not to do. They're always told what to do, and that's all about focus on the positive, focus on the necessary next step. Don't be looking at what you shouldn't do. Look at what you should be doing, and we hope that we contribute somewhat to that environment.
So, this is a passion of mine, but if we use that airline analogy there. So, what are the problems for businesses when you only say to people, "Don't miss, don't make a mistake," or in my case, I often say to people, "Don't think of a blue tree." So you've just thought of a blue tree. What's the problem rather than telling people, "Don't do that, just do this"? Well, what's the challenge?
Well, I think there's two issues there. I think number one, you have to allow people to make mistakes. Because if they don't make mistakes, they don't learn. I was talking to one of my kids about this the other day, and because they'd made a mistake and they came home and they were kind of upset about it. And I said, we could never have, I could never have built a business that was successful in what it did without all the things we coughed up at the start in the early years. I mean, thank God none of them were fatal, but they were certainly painful. But I would have had no learning experience in terms of building out a product and a process that was going to be able to navigate its way through its given industry without having made all those mistakes. So I think that the don't do. I mean, clearly you have to have some don't do's, Adrian, right? So you have to have thou shalt not kill, right? I mean, you need very fundamentals in don't do, but I think after that, in terms of following a process and in terms of creating an environment for success, I think failure has to be permissible. I actually think failure should be celebrated, because without failure you don't have learnings. And these are my personal views. I mean, I'm no business consultant, but I think without those failures you can't learn and grow. And my view of the business world is that it's the same thing. You have to have those failures to be able to learn and grow. And then I think in terms of the things you absolutely do, it has to be, learn, look forward, grow, and try again. I think it was, again, somebody, I can't remember, was it Joyce or Wilde, said, try and fail, try again, fail better.
Yeah, no better. Yeah.
I can't. I know the quote isn't. But the essence of it is the essence. And if I was instructing someone, in building a business, or somebody working for me, saying keep on trying, but keep on improving, and I think then you end up with something that's pretty impressive.
Excellent. Well, Michael, firstly, to say thank you so much indeed for your time today.
Thank you.
Just want to honor and just respect the fact that you bring so much collaboration to the industry. But I think that's the one for me. I think just bringing that there to the end, which is how can we give people the opportunity to succeed across the industry? Because it's not just about teams, it's about people we partner with, people we collaborate with on a consistent basis. So I wish you huge success in April's event in Dubai, and very much look forward to hearing more about the journey that the Card and Payment Awards is now on. Thank you very much indeed today.
Thank you for having me, Adrian. You're very good. Nice to talk to you.